I mean, I don't know about you guys, but after I've gone on a drunken binge, hanging out in a haunted hotel for days on end is exactly what the doctor ordered. Bright Hill Road is brought to us by director Robert Cuffley and stars Seopin Williams, sorry I know I fucked that all up, Michael Eklund, and Argam Dashi. We follow Marcy, played by Williams, a corporate HR representative that has a bit of a drinking problem. Apparently, in the previous week, Marcy fired a guy for unspecified reasons. Unfortunately for her, she was so blitzed out of her mind when she was doing it that she forgot that the guy kind of threatened that he was gonna come back and kill everybody. So, shortly after arriving at work that Monday morning, he showed back up with a gun and started shooting people. A lot of people are killed, but fortunately Marcy survives. Unfortunately, she now has to live with the fact that had she said something last week, this could have all been prevented. She's suspended from her job, and this just drives her further down the hole of drinking her life away. One night, while on a drunken binge, per usual, she decides to pack up and go see her sister to get away from it all. On her way there, she's so blitzed out of her mind, she ends up having to pull over and park and passes out until the next morning. One guess where she passes out at. That's right, on Bright Hill Road. She's awakened in her car by the operator of the boarding house that she's parked in front of. Miss M, played by Agam Darshi, invites her into the boarding house to get off the street. Marcy decides to stay for the night just to kind of get everything together before she gets back on the road. While here, through a course of events, she decides to stop drinking. This causes her to start going through withdrawals, and she's forced to stay at the boarding house a bit longer until she gets over it. And this is when shit starts to get weird. Not everything's right at Bright Hill Road. She starts hearing things from rooms that nobody's in, people yelling for help, and big crashes and bangs, screams and voices, and just all kinds of crazy shit. She starts to see things and apparitions, some of which are in her own room. But due to the withdrawal she's having, she has a hard time telling if everything she's hearing and seeing is real, or if it's just her head messing with her because her body's going through this traumatic experience. And now as she claws her way out of this hole of addiction, she has to face her own demons and perhaps some others. Bright Hill Road is on the surface a traditional horror film. You got a person in an unfamiliar, kind of creepy environment that has a lot of history. Lots of disturbing imagery and auditory cues throughout, a generally creepy atmosphere throughout, and a whole lot of stuff we can't quite explain as the story unfolds. So yeah, ghost story, right? Maybe, kinda. While Bright House Road is definitely about the supernatural to a degree, it's much more about addiction and having to face our demons. This part of the movie I really liked. You totally believe Marcy is an alcoholic that is in absolute pain. She really does want to quit. She attempts multiple times just within this movie. But then you see the addiction start to tear away at her and give her every reason in the book to take another drink. Because not only is the want for the alcohol, the actual addiction, a problem, but also the fact that she's had all this stuff going on that she's not had to face this whole time, and now all of a sudden she does. It all just kind of weighs down on her and comes crashing down. The movie did a great job of showing that and making it real difficult to tell whether what we're seeing is actually something supernatural or if it's all in her head due to everything that's going on with her right now. I mean, she's clearly got a lot going on. She was already an alcoholic, then she survived a shooter situation where people like died right in her arms. She's dealing with the fact that possibly all these people didn't have to die, and the reason that they did is kind of her fault for not saying something. So Marcy's definitely got some stress, that's for sure. Now, even though this movie deeply focuses on the addiction side of the story, it is at its core a horror thriller, and it does a pretty good job of having an overall creepy atmosphere and showing us some pretty disturbing imagery that will get under your skin at times. There are some jump scares too, and while they do teeter on the edge of being a bit overdone, I will admit that they were effective. It's not like jump scare-tastic or anything, but there are enough of them there to take notice that, wow, this has been quite a few jump scares in a fairly compressed amount of time. The story as a whole and where it ends up going is interesting while not necessarily wholly original. It does have some original beats to it, I'll give it that, but the overarching story itself, we have seen this kind of thing before. Now, I did like the way that they executed this story, but once again, you're not going to be really surprised when you get to the final end of the movie. Overall, though, I did enjoy the story and fucking execution of Bright Hill Road. As far as performances go, there's not a whole lot of people in the vast majority of this movie. After that beginning shooting scene, there's only about 3 people in the movie for the most part. Seopin Williams' Marcy is an interesting character to follow, and Williams' performance here is very believable. You sympathize with this character. You don't necessarily agree with all the decisions she makes and the things she does, but you do sympathize with her. You understand where she's coming from. You want her to be successful in breaking this habit, so every time that she trips and falls, it's really kind of painful to you, the viewer, because you're on board with that. You want to see her succeed. She did a great job here of just being rattled out of her fucking mind, and like us, not ever really knowing if what she's seeing is real or not. Agam Dashi and Michael Eklund both do solid jobs as well. Neither of them is focused on nearly as much as Marcy, but what we get from them is solid as a whole. The vast majority of this movie is really on the back of Williams' Marcy, and as I mentioned a moment ago, she doesn't disappoint there. She does a really good job here of keeping us invested with this character and believing every minute of it. Now, from a technical standpoint, this movie is not the highest budgeted film ever made, but it doesn't look low budget. Now, there's not a whole lot going on here, and almost the entire movie takes place within this boarding house. But the different parts of the boarding house are used to very good effect, and the movie is shot in that traditional horror movie way where you don't always see everything that's right out of frame, or something's right over here out of focus that you know's not supposed to be there and like walks by all creepy like. You get a lot of that, but you also get a lot of wide shots in really dark areas of our main character. I don't think it's supposed to be someone like directly watching her, but it's almost just like the house is watching her. It makes you feel like she's not always alone, like there's something else there seeing her. Maybe not even like a specific thing, but just kind of like a force or whatever it is that's going on here is seeing her. You get that feeling quite a bit throughout the movie, and no, not just because sometimes they show shit coming out at her. The makeup and special effects that we get here are limited, but they are all good. Nothing that's gonna like blow your mind, but all of it is effective in what it was trying to do. This movie is much more about Marcy's mental state, and the camera work and editing that they used to get that point across was very well done. Especially the editing. I feel like this movie probably really came together in the editing bay. As a whole, I would say that this movie's really well put together and looks pretty solid overall. Bright Hill Road was pretty good. It was an intriguing look at addiction with a mystery that kept me interested until the end. It's not necessarily the scariest movie ever made, but it does have a few parts that will creep you out. And I ain't gonna lie, but a couple of those jump scares got me too. And while the ending wasn't the most original, it was satisfying enough. There's some really good yet limited performances here, and overall, I did enjoy the movie and think that Bright Hills Road is absolutely worth streaming.
Across the street.
If you like your horror movies to have a little bit more going on between the ears, but are okay with the fairly familiar story, then check out Bright Hill Road one night, and I think you'll have a pretty good time with it. So there it is, guys, my review of Bright Hill Road. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Austin.
This whole place is something's not right.
Now, as I mentioned, there are jump scares in this movie, and a couple of them did get me. But there's one in particular that got me real good. I'm not gonna spoil it, but there's a part where suddenly a thing shows up in a room, and it's done in jump scare fashion, and I just wasn't expecting it. Mainly because at that very moment, right before it happened, I kind of looked away for just a second to grab something, and then as I turned back, like the instant I turned back, not expecting it, and I had a drink in my hand, that shit pops up on screen real loud, and it's like right as my eyes came to it, that's when it happened, and I just wasn't expecting it at all. My mind kind of wasn't in it in that moment, and I about fucking shit myself. Not only that, but I spilled some of the drink I had in my hand too, and that just kind of added to the entire situation. That's when I noticed that I'm not getting any younger, and these kind of movies one day might actually get me. Yeah. So if I just suddenly stopped making reviews one day, that's probably what happened. I was watching a fucking scary movie, and it was just too much, and I fucking died. Honestly, wouldn't be surprised if that's how I go out. I at least hope it's a good movie, though.